Welcome everybody. Thanks for tuning in and clicking on this video. The National Book Festival for 2022 is right around the corner, and we are celebrating with the author of our Great Reads from Great Places 2022 selection, Celia Pérez. The National Book Festival is one of the largest literary events in the United States, held in Washington, D.C. by the Library of Congress annually. As Florida's Center for the Book, Florida Humanities participates in the Great Reads from Great Places program, an annual feature of the National Book Festival that celebrates each state's literary culture with young reader titles. Our 2022 selection is Strange Birds, a field guide to Ruffling Feathers by award-winning author and Miami native Celia C. Pérez. Strange Birds is the story of what happens when a mysterious invitation brings together four strangers from different backgrounds. Initially, these strangers don't see eye to eye and are challenged to set aside their differences and join forces to challenge a local tradition they can agree is outdated. Celia is originally from Miami, where she grew up in the Alapata neighborhood and is a graduate of the University of Florida and the University of South Florida. She now lives with her family in Chicago, where in addition to writing books about lovable weirdos and outsiders, she works as a community college librarian. You can visit her online at celiacperez.com. We're here today with Celia to talk about Strange Birds. Welcome, Celia.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here today.
Wonderful, and we're so honored to have you. So my first question is that the protagonists of Strange Birds fight against their local scout troops, the Floras, as they have a practice of using a hat with exotic bird feathers in a ceremony / pageant that they have. And the girls cite the Migratory Bird Act of 1918. What inspired you to write a novel featuring this lesser-known environmental act?
Yeah, lesser known, but still has a big impact. So my writing process often involves me falling into rabbit holes. I at the end of the whole, once the book is done, I can never remember what came first, the object or the rabbit hole. And in this case, I came across an article about this trend in the late 1800s and early 1900s of wearing hats with these extravagant bird feathers and sometimes even entire like taxidermied birds. And that led me to read about how birds were hunted, some species almost to the brink of extinction, in the name of this fashion trend. And so that kind of just led me down this path of learning about Harriet Hemingway and Mina Hall, two women who worked to advocate for conservation and for protecting birds, and for ending this trend that was leading to these really big impact on bird species. And so and that led to learning about the Migratory Bird Treaty Act of 1918, the work that these two women did and other women did to educate and to advocate for protecting bird species, had impact on creating what we know today as the Audubon Society and the eventual passing of this Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it was still relevant, timely. I think conservation efforts and protecting the environment are timeless issues, and they're relevant to young people today. And so that's where that came from.
Absolutely. And similarly, you talked a lot about how you go down research rabbit holes when you start writing your books, and sometimes you may not know where those lead. But what is the process for you of writing a book for younger readers like?
So my fondest memories of reading and of like my identity as a reader, which has been my lifelong identity, are from those years that middle grade captures. So 9, 10, 11, 12. When I think of like happy memories and happy summer memories, it's always from those ages. And so I think for me, it's really easy to get into writing a story for those ages, because I'm always sort of writing for myself at that age. So I try to think of a story that I would have been interested in, that I would have enjoyed reading, something that is engaging, but also that is empowering to kids. I think for me, that is always somewhere in my mind during the writing process, is writing something that they will read, and when they leave, have a sense of empowerment and some kind of tool that they can use out in the world. I read a lot. I meet a lot of middle grade readers as an author of middle grade. And I think those ages are just so perfect to write for, because they are on that border of still being very childlike and innocent and hopeful, and also realizing that the world isn't black and white, and that things are not always so easily fixed as we might hope.
And you mentioned that you write the books that you would want to see on the shelf if you were 9, 10, 11, 12. But what was your favorite book when you were in that age group?
So the one that always comes to me first, because I still read it every few years. I still have the book that I bought when I was in the 3rd grade, and it's been, so I can actually I'll show it to you, because it looks like it's been around for 40 years. So it's Witch's Sister by Phyllis Reynolds Naylor. And I think it's probably one of her lesser known books, but it was a book that I bought when I was in the 3rd grade. I ordered it from one of those troll book order forums, which are not around anymore. Now it's Scholastic, but and I loved it because it was mine. It was the first book that I owned, that I purchased with my own money. And I also love it because it's a great story. It doesn't age. I've read it as an adult. I've read it for many times over the years. It's scary. It's still spooky. The creep factor is great. So I would encourage everyone to check out Witch's Sister.
Yeah, 2 recommendations in one video. That's awesome. So you mentioned books that are both adults and children can take away things from. Your novel discusses important themes of being a good steward for your environment, being an activist in your community. What do you think that readers can take away from the protagonists in the story?
I try not to think too much when I'm writing about like what the lesson will be, because then I feel like it controls the story too much, and that I think for me that doesn't quite work. But I do hope that from all of my books, and especially from this one, that when readers are done, they realize that small actions can have impacts. Sometimes we think that there's not a whole lot I can do as a single person in my own little community, but these kids take action anyway, and do have an impact on what happens in their small community, but with the hope that it also carries on to into the larger world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that when I was reading the book, that came through of being an activist within your community and being an activist within your capabilities as well, either within your age or your town. And it was really, it was very intriguing, and I was very invested to see if the girls would end up getting the hat removed from the ceremony or not. I also saw a lot of who I was as a 12-year-old in all the elements of the 4 girls. So who do you see yourself most in, both as a kid and then now as an adult?
So there is a little bit of me in each one of the characters, so I can see myself in all of them. I think there's a half and half. So I think of younger me, probably Ophelia and Kat, who I think are a little more like innocent and maybe a little more quiet. And then adult me is probably Aster and Slade, or a little more jaded.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like I said, I saw myself in all 4 girls at different stages of my life, and it rings true to the book being a great choice for both young readers and adult readers. And something else that really stuck with me is that as a Florida native, I saw a lot of the elements of what my childhood was like growing up in Florida. And so, how do you think your childhood in Florida influenced the setting of the book, and how do you think Strange Birds embodies what Florida is?
The first thing, one of the earliest details I knew about this book before there was a story and there were 4 protagonists, was that I wanted it to be set in South Florida. Growing up, I think I have a memory of one book that I read that was set in South Florida, and that was Judy Blume's, starring Sally J. Friedman as herself, which starts in New Jersey and then moves to Miami Beach. But Miami and South Florida is, and the state of Florida is so unique. It's so diverse. It's, I think, so different from any other place in the United States. And I wanted to try to capture that, that diversity and the just like unique kind of quirky nature of some of the places in Florida. I also wanted it to be set specifically in South Florida. I grew up in Miami. It's takes place in a fictional town because I wanted to be able to take liberties with like geography and history and things like that. But Sable Palms is based partly on the area of Miami that I grew up in called, it's a neighborhood called Alapata that's in Northwest Miami. For Miami folks, it's right near where the old Orange Bowl was. That's now the Marlins Stadium. And it's also partly based on the area of Coconut Grove, both areas where roosters and peacocks really do wander the streets. So I did research on the history of those areas and the people who built it, not just with money, but with labor, the people who really worked to build those places up, and namely, immigrants, people from the Bahamas and from other areas in Latin America who came and put in a lot of hard work to make the places that we see today.
And so my last question for you today is, what are you reading right now, and what has been some of your favorite reads of the year so far?
So right now I am reading, when I was a kid, I was a huge Greek mythology fan. I think a lot of kids go through that Greek mythology fandom. And I've not revisited or visited those stories in a long time. So I'm reading Dolaire's book of Greek myths. So that is one thing I'm reading. I am trying to think of books. One of the authors that I've been reading a lot of this year that I've really enjoyed is Kevin Henkes, who has done picture books and middle grade. I've been really enjoying his middle grade. And then I am also reading I tend to read a lot at the same time, which is probably not the best approach to finishing anything, but I am reading a book called Talking to the Dead, and the author is escaping me, but it's a book about the history of modern spiritualism. So the belief that you could contact the dead through seances and mediums.
Well, thank you so much, Celia, for being here. We recommend that you check out her book, Strange Birds, which is our 2022 Great Reads from Great Places National Book Festival pick, and her upcoming novel, Tumble, which releases in August 2022. Thank you again, Celia, for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks so very much.
Have a great day, everyone.